DXDC nagpabiling number 1 sa Quarter 4 2025 KBP Kantar Media Survey.
Daghang salamat sa kanunay nga pagpaminaw sa kahanginan.
Daghang salamat sab sa kanunay nga pagsunod kanamo online pinaagi sa among digital platforms.
O gumika din ini amo pang mas pakusgan ang among programa.
Promos ug kalingawan.
Mas paligunan pa namo ang signal.
Kining tanan na amo pang panikamutan alang kaninyo mga kasama.
Baby, oh, what a mess sa mga radyo nyo. Baby, oh, RadyoMaN nationwide.
Sama ka sa pa. Daghang salamat for making us consistent number 1. Tatak RadyoMaN.
May nga pon kaninyong tanan mga kasama tong oras sa alas 4:38.
RadyoMaN.
This time check is brought to you by BioFlu. 2 or more symptoms? Baka flu na yan. I-BioFlu na. This time check is brought to you by Head & Shoulders. Up to 100% dandruff-free with Head & Shoulders.
Straight to the point. Straight to the point.
Hello, may hapon kaninyong tanan mga kasama. Kamunamino gihapon na diri sa tuang Sibianan ng DXDC 621 RMN Davao. Welcome mga kasama. Niyan na po kita karon sa tuang tulumanon matag hapon ang Straight to the Point Afternoon Edition. It's Webes today mga kasama. It's Thursday, adlaw nga Webes, February 26, Pebrero 26, 2026. Kumusta man ang adlaw nga Webes mga kasama? Ako na po inyo makauban, kini si RadyoMaN Leo Battulayan. O ako nang hinaut sa kanuni mga kasama nga luyo sa mga pagsulay nga atong gipang-agian ingon man mga problemang gipang-pasan. Hinaut nga nagyapon mong tanan karon mga kasama sa maayong kahimtang ingon man maayong panlawas.
Straight to the point.
Uban na pugko ninyo mga kasama hangtod alas 5:30 sulod sa usa ka oras sa tuwaning pangtukion ingon man hisgutan ning mga nagbagang isyu ug mga nagunang katikaran sa tong palibot mga kasama. Og karon unahon nato mga kasama ang atuang pinaka-latest nga lakat sa panahon. Makauban nato mga kasama si kasamang Shine Alvarez, ang atuang student intern gikan Davao del Norte State College kay sayro na ito mga kasama kung doon na bay na monitor ang DOST pag-asang low pressure area sulod sa itong Philippine Area of Responsibility. Ingon man kining unsaning weather system nga padayong nakaapekto sa atong nasod.
Weather update.
Yes, RadyoMaN Leo, mayong hapon kanimo og sa danan natong mga tigpaminaw. Ania nang naguna og labas nga update sa lakat sa atong panahon. Sumala sa pinakaulahing datos gikan sa DOST Pag-asa, padayong makasinati og hapsay nga panganod ang nasod tungod wala gihapoy na monitor nga low pressure area kun LPA sulod sa Philippine Area of Responsibility kun PAR. Samtang easterly sab ang padayon nakaapekto sa nasod. Ang Davao City ug ang probensya sa Bukidnon makasinati sa may pagka mapanganuron ngadto sa mapanganuron nga kalangitan, inubanan sa patak-patak nga mga pag-ulan, kilat og pagpanalugdog tungod kini sa easterlies. Kasarangan nga hangin nga magagikan sa amihanang sidlakan ngadto sa amihanan nga direksyon ang mopasulabi, inubanan sa hapsay ngadto sa kasarangan nga pagbalod sa kadagatan. Gilauman sabang hinay ngadto sa kasarangan nga usahay moabot sa kusog nga pagpanaligsik o pagbundak sa ulan, inubanan sa kilat og kusog nga hangin sa probensya sa Davao del Norte, partikularmente ang Kapalong, San Isidro, Talaingod, Asuncion, New Corilla ug City of Samal og ang probensya sa Davao de Oro, partikularmente sa Laak, Monte Vista ug New Bataan. Labi na sabsad sa probinsya sa Davao Occidental, partikularmente sa Don Marcelino, Santa Maria, Malita ug ingon man sa Davao City sulod sa usa ngadto sa 2 ka oras. Giabisuhan ang mga residente labi na ang mga naa sa low-lying, flood prone og mountainous areas nga magbantay-bantay sa posibleng kusog nga pagbundak sa ulan, inubanan sa kilat og dalugdog nga hinungdan sa posibleng pagbaha og pagdahil sa yuta. Yes, RadyoMaN Leo.
Okay, thank you so much kasamang Shine sa maong update.
Alang sa weather update, kasama mo sa balita og serbisyo publiko, Shine Alvarez, diyan na si intern Tatak RMN.
Weather update. Straight to the point. Straight to the point.
Once again, thank you so much. Sa makausap pa, maing daghang kay salamat kang kasamang Shine Alvarez, ang atuang student intern mga kasama gikan Davao del Norte State College alang sa paghatod sa nag-una og labas nga lakat sa panahon. At ang oras mga kasama, alas 4:42 nas kahaponon. Maing hapon kaninyong tanan sa makausap pa sa mga naminaw karon sa ilang mga radyo pinagi sa radio dial nga 621 kHz. Maing hapon kaninyong tanan labi na ning mga galantaw kanato karon online kang kasamang Randy Santisas, Sanchez Sumanday, Marceli, Rhea Gomez, ingon man kasamang Cortel, Mark Anthony. Itaw-taw mga kasama ato aning hisgutan ning Agdaw public market nga shooting lagi mga kasama gigamit nga ebidensya sa International Criminal Court prosecutors. Batok kang former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte atol sa confirmation of charges ni ini sa International Criminal Court. Nga lagi mga kasama ga-review raman unta og CCTV footages ang atuang kani presidente o kani mayor diri sa Davao City gigamit na hinuon kini mga kasama o gi-misinterpret o misrepresent ang maong video mga kasama o gilink pa kini sa pagpatay matud pa sa extra o kining drug war campaign ni former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Ato ang sulayan mga kasama ang linya taod-taod sa usa ka Davao journalist nga si Sir Ben Jason Tesorna. Ato ang sayron mga kasama kung giunsa ni pagkuha sa video o giunsa paggamit kini sa International Criminal Court prosecutor team kining paglink lagi sa extrajudicial killings sa war on drugs ni former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Apan before na mga kasama ako sa nga lakbitan di ay o timbaya ning mga anak karon sa atuang Facebook live kasamang Boyet de la Serna Lombo. Good afternoon kanimo kasama and maulan sab nga kahaponon kanimo sa mga usapa kasamang Cortel Mark Anthony amping day mga sa kanunay no sa kini mga motorista, mga drivers na to nga magapaminaw karon maing hapon og amping mo sa kadalanan mga kasama sanglit posibleng danlog kini og sa mga labi na sa mga spalto nga area ay kini mga spalto nga dalan mga kasama amping mo diha nga banda kay danlog yun na for sure ang maong dalan labi na kung basa. And of course may hapon sabdi ay kasamang Jaysa maulanon nga hapon Sir Leo. Shoutout ko ni Antonio Jr., Ate Thelma, Uncle Tonying, Papa Rudy o Kuya Jun Ray minaw ron og radyo didto sa May Marilog. Thank you so much kasamang Jaysa. Thank you so much Sam kang kasamang Nilsa Damdas. Good afternoon kanimo ingon man kasamang Jincy Cooper. Shoutout daw General Ronel Pagalongan kasamang Cortel Mark Anthony ingon man kasamang Jovan Ray Tolentino Manugilan. May ngapon shoutout from Malandog Demolog Malita Davao Occidental. And of course good afternoon sab kang kasamang Boyet de la Serna Lombo. Atong oras alas 4:45 nas kapunon mga kasama atuan ng Siron, atuan ng sulayan ang linya ni Sir Ben Jason Tesorna sa Davao journalist mga kasama kabahin lang gihapon ni ining gigamit nga video sa International Criminal Court prosecution batok kang former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte og sa mga wala na sayo diha mga kasama ang kining video di ay gigamit is murag frame as live shooting daw mga kasama o real time nga pagpamusil o kanang gisugo daw ni former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte nga magpatumba dito sa Agdaw public market mga kasama. Mauna ang narrative nga gi-portray sa International Criminal Court prosecutor team nga lagi si former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte ang nagmando pero ang kamatuoran daw ni ini karon mga kasama kay sumala sa nag-upload sa mga video sa tag-iya sa mga video mga kasama kay mao daw kini ang pag-review ni former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte sa bag-ong mugna nga Central 911 CCTV footages mga kasama o mga makuha sa CCTV footage na kung saan nataan pero kato mga kasama atoan ng mahinabi karon si Sir Ben Jason Tesorna usa ka Davao journalist nga usab nga maupod ang tag-iya mga kasama sa video nga gigamit sa International Criminal Court prosecution.
Straight to the point.
Alright, nakaroon sa pikas linya mga kasama si Sir Ben. Good afternoon po Sir Ben.
Leo.
Yes po, Sir Ben, good afternoon once again. Sir, regarding po dito sa video na ginamit ng ICC prosecution, pwede nyo po ba kaming mabigyan po ng brief background, sir, kung ano po yung naging reaksyon nyo nung nakita nyo na ginamit yung video nyo?
Una ko nakita yun sa sa isang post ng isang news outlet. So nung nakita ko na medyo mali yung interpretation ng ICC prosecutors, I readily commented doon sa video as a post ng GMA actually yung nag-post ng social media nila. So nag-comment ako na aking video yan na hindi na mali yung mali yung ang
Prosecutor.
interpretation ng ICC prosecutor.
Sir, itong video po ba, sir, is publicly available na nung the day na in-upload yun yung video sa YouTube?
Yes, actually sa YouTube yun. That was uploaded December 19, 2013. Around 1:41 a.m. yung upload.
Sir, pwede nyo po ba kaming ma-brief kung ano yon? Kasi kayo po mismo ang kasama ni former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte nung nag-review siya sa mga CCTV footage. Sir, any clarifications po?
Yes. Galing kami dun sa galing kami dun sa After Dark, yung piano bar ni Mayor Duterte. So after that, he invited us, tatlo kaming journalists in-invite niya para pumunta doon to see the CCTV the operation center ng Davao Central 911. Bago pala yung 911 noon So yun, pumasok kami, umakyat kami doon sa building. Doon pinakita niya sa loob yung operation center. Doon namin nakita yung wall na puno ng CCTV monitors. So doon, sinabihan niya yung operator, sige, pakita mo, zoom in mo yung TF Davao na nasa Turil yata yun zoom in mo yun, tingnan mo yung plate name niya, name plate niya, tingnan mo. So zoom out, pinakita na, very proud kasi siya sa high-tech na CCTV cameras. Then after that, sabi niya, i-play mo yung recording natin dun sa yun sa barilan sa Agdao. So yun na yung video na ginamit ng ICC. Pero ang purpose talaga noon, pinakita niya sa amin was to impress upon us na from that day on, lahat ng mga criminal activities, mga crimes, pwede na ma-record dahil sa CCTV cameras. So yung gusto niya malaman ng publiko that time. Parang gano'n siya.
So yung intention talaga ni former mayor ng ating syudad sa Davao, sir, is to inform lang na meron ng CCTV footages. Hindi yung live incident na siya talaga yung nag-utos doon sa mga gunmen na barilin yung...
Napansin mo yung video, daytime yung barilan, di ba?
Yes.
Pero ang nag-shoot ako nung andun kami was 1 a.m. yun, madaling araw. So makita mo, recording talaga yung video ng barilan. And that happened December 4, 2013. Nung nag-video ako, December 19, 2013.
Okay. Sir, ano po ba yung mga steps na ginawa natin ngayon para ma-address tong issue na to?
Kanina, nag-issue na ako ng affidavit, pinanotarize ko. Then si Attorney Leo Delgra, pinorward yung affidavit ko kay Attorney Martin Delgra na nasa Hague ngayon sa Netherlands. So sila na bahala doon mag-forward doon sa ICC.
So sir, aside sa affidavit, ano po ba yung inaasahan natin ngayon na magiging tugon ng kampo ni Duterte ngayon, lalo na nung nalaman natin ngayon na yung totoo na hindi pala si former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte ang hindi totoo yung live shooting incident sa may Agdao Public Market?
I think ang gagamitin na yung affidavit ko, kasi nilagay ko rin sa affidavit ko, I demanded apology from the ICC prosecutor Nichols who used that video without my authorization. Then I also demanded na tanggalin yung video na yun sa court records ng ICC. So I guess yun yung next move ng legal counsel ni FPRRD.
Alright, thank you so much kang Sir Ben Jason Tishorna usa ka Davao journalist mga kasama, and at least nakahatagan og katinawan karon mga kasama nga walay kamatuoran ang maong pasangil sa International Criminal Court prosecutor. Thank you so much, Sir Ben.
Straight to the point. Straight to the point.
Alright, once again, thank you so much and daghan kay salamat kang kasamang ka Sir Ben Jason Tishorna, ang uploader mga kasama o ang tag-iya sa video nga gigamit sa International Criminal Court prosecutors. Lagi kabahin lagi ini mga kasama nga i-frame kining misrepresent si former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte ug ato ang nahibala na sayran karon mga kasama nga way back December 4 pa di ay ang maong pagpamusil unya ang kadtong ang video nga nag-check si former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte sa mga CCTV footages o gipa-replay ra gani niya kung padipaminawon lang nimo tarong ang video makasama madungog nimo o ipakita sa daw to be ana si FPRD nga ipakita ra gud to be o kato ang replay sa kumbaga sa nakuha nga video sa pagpamusil dito sa Agdao Public Market. So mo to ang kamatuoran karon makasama, at least karon naibal-an nato nga dunay lakang nga gibuhat si Sir Ben Tishorna aron ma-address ang maong issue o malikayan o ma-mitigate na ang kining dugang pa nga mga misrepresentation kang former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Ato lang gyapon mga kasama sa confirmation of charges o padayon nga confirmation of charges hearing sa atong kanhi presidente. Og speaking of confirmation of charges, unya na sabdi ay mga kasama at ang ininyo kay magpadayon na ang ikatulong adlaw sa confirmation of charges hearing ni former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte sa International Criminal Court. Og higayon na sab kini mga kasama ni Attorney Nicholas Kaufman uban ang legal team ni former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Sila na sab ang maghatad sa ilahang merits ingon man depensa kung unsa man ang gipang presenta sa prosecutor team sa International Criminal Court ni adtong ikaduhang sesyon sa confirmation of charges hearing ni former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
Straight to the point.
Alas 4:54 na itong oras mga kasama, diri na sab kita sa dugang pangkatikaran sa palibot. Makisayod sa kita mga kasama sa report ni RadyoMaN Gretchel Igot kay ang investigasyon sa bomb threat sa usa ka tunghaan diri sa atong dakbayan sa Davao gapadayon. Ato ang sayron mga kasama ang kinatibuk-ang detalye pinaagi sa report ni RadyoMaN Gretchel Igot.
DXDC RadyoMaN Report.
Yes, RadyoMaN Leo gibutyag karon sa Davao City Police Office ken DCPO nga nagpadayon ang ilang investigasyon sa mga nagpaluyo sa sunod-sunod nga bomb threat nga nahitabo gahapong adlaw Pebrero 25 ug karong adlaw alas 11 sa udto Pebrero 26 ning kasamtangang tuig. Sa pakiginabi sa DXDC team kang DCPO spokesperson Captain Hazel Caballero Tuazon, aduna na sila na ilang individual nga nagpaluyo sa maong binuhatan apan padayon pa nila kining ginaberipika alang sa lehitimong impormasyon. Gani, abtik nila kining giaksyonan ug nagpahigayon og inspeksyon sa sulod sa tulunghaan ug gipapauli ang mga estudyante uban ang mga ginikanan alang sa seguridad sa tanan. Sa pikasbahin mga kasama, kung hilig ka mga pe samtang nagapaminaw sa mga nagunang balita sa DXDC, ilis din na imong kape pag herbal coffee na. Daghang benepisyong dala, makapugong ug makatabang nga makapaayo sa mga balatian. Huwag magtiis, magkape na sa Paragis. Paragis bila-bila herbal coffee nga gama sa GFMQ Marketing. Usa ka anti-diabetic, anti-inflammatory, antibacterial ug antioxidant nga dunay mangustina nga makapaligon sa mga immune system ug anti-cancer, goto-cola nga pangdusa anxiety, stress ug memory enhancer. Duna sab kini turmeric nga makatabang aron moubos ang risgo nga magka-heart disease ka. Maunang timpla og higop na sa kape nga sigurado ang saktong timplada. Basta kapeng klaro, dinhi na kita sa sigurado. Lamian na, makatabang pa. Paragis Bila-Bila Herbal Coffee. Sa Paragis Bila-Bila, di na ka mag-agwanta pa. Sa dugang kasayuran, tawag lang sa 0935-640-2613. Bapalit sa mga suking butika. Alang sa straight to the point, kini si RadyoMaN Gretchel Igot, Tatak, RadyoMaN.
Straight to the point.
Daghang salamat kang RadyoMaN Gretchel Igo. Tatong oras mga kasama, alas 4:57 nas kapunon. Sa makausapang may hapon kaninyong tanan mga kasama, sa mga naminaw karon sila mga radyo ingon man galantaw kanato online. Thank you so much and good afternoon kaninyong tanan mga kasama. Kahinumdum mo atong 18 ka nagpailang mga kanisundalo mga kasama o kining mga 18 Marines nga mas nailan nato. Duna na dai sila yung mga gipasa o gipasar nga mga affidavit mga kasama. Og sumala ni Attorney Levito Baligod base sa maong affidavit sa 18 ka mga nagpailang marino karon mga kasama, giingon nga nasakpan daw si representative o mamamayang liberal party list representative Laila de Lima nga lagi bisita galaag didto mga kasama sa Polo Club Townhouse sa Forbes Park.
Straight to the point.
Inyong idol mga kasama na sakpan na hinuon galaag didto sa Forbes Park. Lagi nakigpulong daw at I don't know asa nga mga lugar dito. Pero nagapulong daw dito mga kasama, nasakpan daw ni ining 18 ka mga nagpailang marino mga kasama nga didto nagikan si mamamayang Liberal Party List Representative Laila de Lima. Siya ano idol ba yung tanako ni? Sukad pa atong issue sa katong kang Junel. Karon na napod siya issue nga dala siya paper bag gikan sa Forbes Park unsa kay unod aning paper bag. Anyway mga kasama sa gligay sa gisumiteng affidavit sa abogado na siplatan matud pa sa mga marino na sakpan nga lagi kining si De Lima nga dunay bit-bit pa nga paper bag mga kasama. Human kini nakigpulong o human kini bibisita sa usa ka establishmento sa kagambalay didto sa may Forbes Park. Atong paminawon mga kasama si Attorney Levito Baligod atol sa usa ka interview iyang dugang pagpaklaro mga kasama unsa ning anaa sa affidavit sa 18 ka mga nagpailang marino.
Straight to the point.
Noong ginawa ko kasi itong affidavit para sa kanila, base sa kanilang salaysay, ang nabanggit kasi nila, yan si Congresswoman De Lima, no? Isa-isa. At I think mga 10 beses na ni-review nila. No? Every week, bumabalik ako sa kanila, binibigyan ko sila ng draft, etc. Ngayon, si Congresswoman Laila De Lima ay nakikita kasi na nakikipagpulong sa Unit Town 8 sa Polo Club Townhouse sa Forbes Park. At yung mga pumirma sa affidavit, sila kasi yung naghahanda ng pera, sila yung nagdadala, sila rin yung nagbabantay, no? At bago ang meeting, dinadala sa loob ng meeting place. At makikita nila na yung bitbit nilang mga bagong bagahe na may pera, paglabas ng mga nagmi-meeting doon ay bitbit na rin nila ang kaparehong paper bag or maleta man yan. At isa si Congresswoman Laila De Lima na nakita nila mismo, eyewitness na nagdala ng paper bag na may salapi sa loob na hindi magkukulang na 5 milyon. Noong ginawa ko kasi...
Inyong nadungog mga kasama ang tingog ni Attorney Levito Baligod atol sa usa ka interview sa mga media dito sa kauluhan mga kasama. Sumala pa ni attorney nga lagi nakita daw ni ining mga marino nga doon na po'y bit-bit. Grabe no, paldo pod kaayo isa ka bisita ni mo dito 5 ka milyon din mo bit-bit pa uli. Pero subject for investigation gihapon kini karon mga kasama no, padayon gihapon ning i-verify sa mga hingtungdang ahensya didto mga kasama kung unsa ang veracity, unsa ka tinuod ang maong affidavit sa kining mga nagpaila o kining mga 18 ka nagpaila ka mga nga marino.
Straight to the point. Straight to the point.
Alas 5:01 na nga itong oras mga kasama sa makausapa maing hapon kaninyong tanan sa karon mga kasama sa way pagdugay atuan ng kumustahon si RadyoMaN Bien Abanos. Manguptana ta mga kasama unsa na pud ka high reaction kay ubay-ubay pud ba ako ang napansin ining or na matikdan sa atuang social media post kaganina mga kasama sa interview ni Attorney Levito Baligod. Pipila ka mga reaction sa pipila ka mga netizens ang murag question na sab. Si De Lima na sab ang na-mention. So Karon mga kasama, atuan na sab hinabion o atuan na pod sa aron unsay mga reaction day sa mga Davaoenyo dihang gitudlo na sab kini na sab present human kang Senator Bong Revilla kay strike 2 naman niya kini kang Representative Laila de Lima kapila na ni nga strike karon nga naapil na pod yung pangalan mga kasama o kanang nalalakip di man pod wala pa man pod na napamatudan pero anay mga allegations na pod karon mga kasama ga circulate gatudlo kang Representative de Lima kaadto kini sa Forbes Park and knowing unsay kisay mga nagpuyo dito sa Forbes Park kapalo na mo kinsa ang nagpuyo dito so di na to nahinganlan pero lagi dito gikan si Representative Laila de Lima kaadto sa Forbes Park o gabit-bit pa pauli og usa ka paper bag mo sa man ni mini version sa mga maleta. Paldo kayo inighuman lag pulong-pulong dito. Pero anyway mga kasama, nalakaroon sa Pigas Linya, RadyoMaN Bien Abanos. RadyoMaN Bien, may hapon. Yes, RadyoMaN Bien.
Na kugang mayroon ang katawan RadyoMaN Leo. Kililawing na sinabi na nga murag nadawit na po din pangalan ni Representative Laila de Lima kay siyempre ilado mo rin sa una kasi senador pa ni si Obi ni nauso ng pangalan nga Junel ako ni RadyoMaN Leo may nga daw din mo Junel siyempre karon RadyoMaN Leo murag na kuan ba kanang kining na murag na-apil sa mga pangalan nga matod pa paldo-paldo o hinaot na dili ni tinuod
hinaot pa gyud unta
Davaoenyo RadyoMaN Leo sir may adlaw ni mo sa imong pangalan kay sir
Si Brother Enting.
Brother
Enting, ano yung ma-istorya ni karon nga si Junel, si Laila de Lima, parang nisulod sa kailadong lugar nga diha nagpuyo ang mga dato ng mga tao na pagbala, murag nanay gibit-bit nga, amot pa kung sapay, sakay gibit-bit ani nga pa ito bago, unsa gyud sundanan, unsa ginasulod ani mo to baka nga nalambigit siya ning mga anomalya karon.
Sa ako, murag dili. Kay siyempre katong sos malita kasi kwarta po to o dili so gano'n itong panahon ni mo ang pamayag ni Lima tingin mo siya nga di daw to tinod no nga apil siya atong malita no? So para dito na naman pamatudan niya kung ipatawag tong mga nagsulti, labi itong mga rin, no? Dito sa Senado, itong panawagan ni Amy Marcos nga para mapamatudan yun na ito tinuod yun itong ilahang gisulti kasamang Bien. RadyoMaN Leo, hindi na kayo sumutana.
Dili naman good ni first time ni ay kisa ganun si Sir Brother kalimot ko sa ito pangalan sir?
Inting daw, RadyoMaN Leo, Inting.
Brother. Okay, Brother Enting. Good afternoon kanimo sir. Sir, gatuo ba ka sa gawas sa giingon ni Representative de Lima is naamapud gud say ginaduso karon nga anti-balimbing na ba? Nga dili na lagi daw likayan na ning mga balimbing na mga politiko. Unsa may kaingon nimo ana sir?
Mangginamot nga manggidala din na panahon sa eleksyon mayroon mga sila o panang napas sa grupo pero pagabot sa dito nga sa lahi na nga punto wala na mo balingbing na jud labinaw ka sila mga interest sir.
Sir, gatuo ba ka sir or wala ka gatuo nga kining mga ginabuhat karon kining mipatimaw nga mga 18 ka nagpailak nga marino usa lang kini ka diversionary tactic sa mga DDS daw. Unsa may kaingon nimo na sir?
Sa ako mo suporta ko atong panawagan ni Senador Amy Marcos no. Kung tinuod dito, pwede sila mo ato sa Senado, mo pansin dito, manumpa sila dito nga. Ito yung gisulti nga tinuod dito. Pero kung hindi sila mo ato dito sa Senado para panumpahan tong ilang sa laysay nila, dito sa panumpahan nila, ang muraga kung makahintin ko nga, muraga na yun ang iabot yun.
So, gatuo man gyud si sir no, ma-feel yun na to nga si Brother Enting is gatuo gyud sa judicial system na to sa mga pamaagi sa balaod. So speaking of, diri kita sir, last na lang sir before takabuyan sir. Since gatuo man gyud ka sa pagpamatuod pamaagi o pinaagi sa balaod sir. So imuha pong pananaw niini karon sir nga kinahanglan pod ipadayon kining impeachment complaint, impeachment kang batok kang Vice President Sara Duterte aron mapamatud-an niya ang iyang mga ang ginalabay nga aligasyon kaniya or mapamatud-an niya nga walay kamatuuran ang mga aligasyong ginalabay kaniya. Tuo ba kana sir?
So sir, actually, para sa kuha, kung para mo gawas sila tinuod, mas okay yun tumagon, no? Dito sa ang ilang parawagan. Kung madayon, kung madayon yung plano ng pag-intik sa Tara. Kung para sa kuha, at na yung para mahumanagit ang tanan na balik-balik naman muna, sir, no?
Exactly.
Sino magyapon kung ilang i-file kaniya itong karon, sino magyapon nga issue. So, ang mo na karon, murag pagkita ito, murag diling tactics nyo, no? Ang mo karon sa kini mga grupo na nag-file kani karon, sir.
Okay, thank you so much kang Brother Enting and of course kang RadyoMaN Bien Abanos.
Yes, para di man na mo to ang tumayag ngayon natin nga avoid ng si Inting o karon di man do karang mga gipasanginan ba para man na kung wa gud sila dawat mapatod-an lang kay kung manamutbot gitong mga ex-marines pailan nila kaso para mas himalan na iskorte kung sige nila kwan tinuod.
Yes.
Ana ra man na pero bailan man na nimo kung maghilom-hilom ra moyon ra nga di na tinuod di harpot ko to siyempre gipasangilan nagugag dako nga nakapaldo ka o nya karon di gyapon ka maning kamot nga malimbi yung pangalan mo mayong pamaagi. Ya lang nako na po yung question do malayo.
Yes.
Di man niyo daghang salamat to kasama mo sa Petag Serbisyo Publiko RadyoMaN Bien Abanos sa katikaran.
Straight to the point.
Okay, daghang salamat sa makausap kang RadyoMaN Bien Abanos. Atong oras mga kasama ay 5:09 na di ay. Break usa kita mga kasama at ang inyo sa atong pagbalik ang dugang pangkatikaran og balita sa atong palibot. Stand by.
Straight to the point.
Oras alas 5:09.
Kasama, sundi kanunay ang DXDC RMN Davao. Pinaagi sa pagpabinaw sa 621 kHz AM radio dial alang sa mga nagunang balita o impormasyon.
Stay updated sa mga nagunang katikaran online.
Pinaagi sa to digital platforms.
Sundi kami sa DXDC 621 RMN Davao sa Facebook.
DXDC Digital sa YouTube, TikTok, Instagram ug X.
I-download sab ang Zeno Radio mobile app.
Ug i-search ang DXDC 621 RMN Davao.
Aron updated ka, bisan asa ka pa.
Kay ang DXDC kasama mo na sa radyo,
Kasama mo pa sa digital.
Tatak RMN.
Sa dili pa moabot ang katalagman, siguruha nga ready, get set, go ka! Andama ang imong go bag. Sulod nini, mao ang tubig ug pagkaon. 10 minos tulo ka adlaw nga supply sa tubig ug pagkaon nga dili daling madaot. Sama sa dilata o biskwit. First aid kit, mga tambal sa samad, sama sa antiseptics, alcohol, ug bandages, ug mga maintenance nga tambal, suga ug enerhiya, flashlight nga dunay extra nga baterya ug power bank alang sa imong cellphone. Importante nga dokumento. Ibutang sa plastic na dili mabasa ang inyong mga ID, birth certificate ug uban pang papeles. Kwarta og pito. Pito aron daling makapangayo og tabang ug gamay nga kwarta nga cash. Oh, andam na imong go bag. Para dali kining makuha atul sa katalagman, ibutang kini sa dali lang nimo makabot nga lugar. Una-huna, sa oras sa katalagman, ang kaluwasan ang prioridad sa tanan. Amping ug ampo sa kanunay kasama. Sa kapahinumdum gikan sa DXDC RadyoMaN Davao. Uy kasama, andam ka ba sa mga kalit nga katalagman? Ang linog walay ginapili nga oras. Aron masiguro ang kaluwasan nimo og sa imong mga higala, ayo kini si Piyata. Una, duck, cover and hold. Sa higayon nga makabati og pagtayog, daling mo tago ilawom sa lig-on nga lamesa. Hangtod mahuman ang linog. Ikaduha, dili magpaduol sa mga mabuak na bintana, mga di kuryenteng kable o mga butang nga dali matumba. Ikatulo, kung anasulod sa usa ka building, di kayi ang paggamit sa elevator. Gamit og stairs kung hagdanan sa paggawas paingon sa luwas nga dapit kung open area. Ikaupat, magbantay sa aftershocks. Pagkahuman sa linog, dili dayon mosulod balik sa building. Magbinantayon sa mga sunod-sunod nga pag-uyog kung aftershocks ug paminaw sa mga pahibalo sa radyo o balita. Huna-huna, sa oras sa katalagman, ang kaluwasan ang prioridad sa tanan. Amping ug ampo sa kanunay kasama. Usa ka pahinumdum gikan sa DXDC RadyoMaN Davao.
Uy, kasama, murag na ay kulang sa imong sakyanan. Pwede mo na to palikitan og DXDC sticker sa mga RadyoMaN?
Pwede, ma'am.
Usa ka adlaw, ang DXDC naglibot sa Davao. Nangitag driver, nga andam upal to sugod sa maso.
Nakabalo ako sa DXDC. Nagapamila ako sa DXDC.
Ano ba kayo na ilang RadyoMaN sa DXDC?
Doon irin lumusbog.
Oh, yeah!
Sa DXDC logo!
Ang bulan sa Marso, ang pangi, ang sa DXDC logo kay Kon. Nata ng imong sakyanan na adonang DXDC sticker, sigurado winner! Yay!
Let's go!
Uy kasama, gusto ba ka mahimong healthy o mupayat apan steady gahapon ang imong body? Dili kinahanglan mag-antos og magpagutong pag-ayo. Ang sekreto ni Ana, saktong diskarte amigo.
Una, hinahinay sa pagkaon sa kanon, parat, tamis og mga processed nga pagkaon. Mas maayo ihulip kini og prutas o gulay. Ikaduha, inom og dagang tubig, dili soft drinks og juice ha, aron ang mugaw sa lawas dali ira marimpyo og mapahawa. Ikatulo, syempre, dili angay kalimtan ang pag-ehersisyo sulod sa 30 minutos ngadto sa usa ka oras aron ang
621 sa Davao City. Basta balita at serbisyo publiko. Tatak RMN.
Maulan nga kahapon di ay kang kasamang Donaby Segovia atong oras sa 5:15.
RMN.
This time check is brought to you by Sunsilk. Use Sunsilk Anti-Dandruff for soft, gandang iwas dandruff hair this summer. This time check is brought to you by Downy. Rock the rub, bango-bango.
Straight to the point. Straight to the point.
Okay, balik kita mga kasama atong oras sa 5:15 nas kapunon. Maayong hapon sa makausap kaniniyong tanan, and of course maayong hapon sab sa mga galantaw kanato karon online. Kasamang Roland Tampos Relampagos, kasamang Emelita Papasin Hatamosa, kasamang Cortel Mark Anthony ngun man kasasi ang partner nga siya kasamang Resami, and of course kasamang Rod Mars Argonilio nga naglantaw daw kanato karon dira sa may Cebu. Uy, shout out kanimo kasama. Thank you so much kasamang Rod Mars, and of course kasamang Ma Concepcion Menorias Carnis Gagui. Good afternoon sir. Good afternoon ma'am rather. And good afternoon sab kang kasamang Josephine Ogos. And of course kasamang Aniseta Bison Cañete, kasamang Jundelmar Arce Ali, and of course kasamang kasamang Aimee Noga, Rhea Gomez, kasamang Gisa, Nilsa Damdas, and may hapon sa mga kasamang Jovan Ray Tolentino, Manugilan, and sa tanang mga galantaw kanato karon online mga kasama, may hapon kaninyong tanan. Ayha kita magpadayon din niya ang mga nagunang katikaran mga kasama. Duna di ay usa ka pagpamusil dito sa may Carmen, Davao del Norte, particularmente sa may Santo Niño. Karon lang nato nakuha nga impormasyon mga kasama. Ato makauban karon si RadyoMaN Makoy Tamundong mga kasama. Ato ang siron kung unsa man ang kinatibuk ang detalye sa maong pagpamusil. Okay, ato ang sulayan karon mga kasama. Ana karon sa pikas linya si RadyoMaN Makoy Tamundong. Yes, RadyoMaN Mac.
Yes, RadyoMaN Leo, may hapon no. May hapon po sa itong mga suking tigpaminaw.
Yes.
Doon tayo nadawat na report po gikan sa may tagum Carmen. Carmen po, puro 3A, Barangay Santo Niño, Carmen. Doon sa may TO lagi, RadyoMaN Leo, kay nahitabong pagpamusil. Alauna sa hapon, alauna 15, particularmente sa may Carmen, sa kalalaki ang nagbuod na sa may 2D oil lagi, RadyoMaN Leo. Sa pagignabi sa Carmen PNP, RadyoMaN Leo, kaning lalaki daw may matud pa, dunay personal personal grudge nga nahitabo.
So ang motive RadyoMaN Mac is ginalantaw karon nga personal grudge. Sumala sa tong kapulisan, okay? RadyoMaN Mac, unsa man ni kanang gitabang pa ba ni sa mga otoridad?
Yes, RadyoMaN Leo, gitabang pa ang maong biktima apana dead on arrival na kini. Kulang na sa mga RadyoMaN Leo, no?
Okay, unsa man ning biktima RadyoMaN Mac, babae ba ni o lalaki?
Lalaki, RadyoMaN Leo. Base sa nakita na itong lagway gikan kang Ali na Villarente Ligalig. Makita na to ang maong lalaki nagbuiod na og sa maong picture, RadyoMaN Leo. Makita nga nagkadugo na dyan ang mga lalaki og giingong gipusil kini sa ulo, pero paday pa ginakupirma karon sa kapulisan na mao nga paghitabo, RadyoMaN Leo.
Okay, daghang salamat sa maong update, RadyoMaN Makoy. Ato lang ning padayong panubayan.
Yes, RadyoMaN Leo, salamat kayo. Ana sa straight to the point, kini si RadyoMaN Makoy Tamundong, tatak RMN.
Straight to the point.
Salamat sa makasaba kang RadyoMaN Makoy Tamundong. Mo to ang nagunang update mga kasama kabahin sa pagpamusil diha sa may Santo Niño, Carmen, Davao del Norte. Okay, si diri na kita makasama sa pikas bahin na sab. Ato ang siron usa kining nahimo natong pakiginabi apan before na mga kasama ako sa di ay ipahibalo kaninyo.
Pagtulong, pagtabang, tatak RMN.
Subli ko nga gapahinomdom kaninyo mga kasama nga karong bulan sa Pebrero dili pa ulahi aron na magpaambit ang imong gugma ngadto sa uban. So sa umaabot nga February 28 karong Sabado mga kasama kinisab ang ulahing adlaw sa bulan sa gugma ang tibuok puwersa sa DXDC 621 RMN Davao mga kasama magpahigayon og RMN Networks dugtong buhay blood donation activity diha sa may Gaisano Grand Turil, Davao City, alas 8 sa buntag hangtod alas 3 kana sa hapon. Kini nga kahimuan mga kasama makahatag gyud og dakong paglaom alang sa katawang Davao-non nang inahanglan og limpyo og luwas nga dugo pinaagi lamang sa imong voluntaryo nga pagtabang og pagdonar. Mao ba ni ang DXDC mga kasama uban ang RadyoMaN Foundation ng Philippine Red Cross sa Davao City Chapter sa pagpaabot sa atong pampublikong serbisyo alang sa tanan. Because your safe blood can save lives mga kasama. O galayon yapon sa maong dugtong buhay blood donation activity mga kasama. Makigalayon day ang DXDC 621 RMN Davao sa ato ang Bureau of Fire Protection Davao City sab. Ato ang paminaon mga kasama atong nahimong pakiginabi sa Bureau of Fire Protection Davao mga kasama.
Kasama mo anumang oras saan
Sanglit sila sab ang atuang partner agency kung mga kasama sa maong kalihukan. Ato ang paminawon mga kasama ang atuang nahimong pakiginabi kang Fire Senior Inspector Frances Marie Sendrijas, ang atuang Chief of Public Information Unit sa Davao City Fire District Commander ug sa Bahada Fire Station, ingon man Chief sa Administrative Branch sa Davao City Fire District.
Straight to the point.
Maayong adlaw mga kasama, ingon man sa atong mahinabi karong tagna asin sa usa sa mga personahe sa Bureau of Fire Protection Davao City Fire District. Gani mga kasama, usa ang BFP sa atong partners. So maabot nga bloodletting project sa DXDC 621 Armen Davao nga pagahitubuon sa Gaisano Ganturil, Davao City karong umaabot nga February 28, 2026 adlaw Sabado, oras alas 8 sa buntag hangtod alas 3 sa hapon. Mong karon mga kasama, kauban gid nato no si Fire Senior Inspector Frances Marie Sendrijas, usa ka Chief of Public Information Unit Davao City Fire District. At the same time mga kasama, usa sab siya ka Station Commander sa Bahada Fire Station and Chief sa Administrative Branch sa Davao City Fire District. Maayong adlaw kanimo din ha, Ma'am Chen. Maayong adlaw po.
Hello ma'am, lahat ng nakikinig sa atin.
Yes po. Gani mga kasama, usa ang BFP sa atong confirm sa makausa ang BFP sa mga confirmed na partners nato sa maabot nga bloodletting activity. So karon ma'am, mangayo lang kung mga pila kaya ang mapadala sa BFP alang niining atong aktibidad nga bloodletting project or dugtong buhay bloodletting project, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. No, right now, ma'am, we already have 30 personnel nasa list po namin, ma'am. Yung ipapadala po namin sa activity nyo this coming February 28. We aim to send a significant number of firefighters and staff, of course, to actively support and participate in this life-saving activity, ma'am.
Alright, thank you so much po kaayo ma'am. Makalipay na madungog no nga duna gayud kamoy ipadala alang isip tabang pud ni sa atong mga katawhan nga nanginahanglan ning dakbayan sa Davao. Daghang salamat bahin nga na ma'am. Ma'am, I'm giving you the opportunity sab ma'am nga kanang manawagan sa atong mga listeners nga naminaw karon isip pag-awhag sa atong mga suking tigpaminaw nga mo-attend sa atong bloodletting na activity karong February 28, 2026 sa Gaisano Ganturil, Davao City.
Yes, ma'am. No? So, to everyone who is listening right now, our fellow Davaoenos, we encourage you to take part in this noble cause. Kasi yung single donation natin can really multiply lives, no? And let us work together in unity and compassion by becoming voluntary blood donors on February 28, 2026 at Gaisano Ganturil. Through this simple act of kindness, alam natin na we can really extend hope and life to those na nangangailangan talaga nito, ma'am.
Alright, thank you so much ma'am. Gani kay mga kasama, your safe blood can save lives. Mao nga karon ma'am Chen, isip among pasalamat po sa inyo. Free kayo ang kahanginan ang DXDC 621 Armen Davao sa kahanginan mga kasama BFP. Free kaayo nga kanang i-promote or i-endorse ang inyong mga current activities karon sa BFP ma'am. If meron po, pwede kayo ninyo nga ipabuhagay karon sa kahanginan ma'am. Go ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. No? So we would like to inform everybody that next week, actually this Sunday, March 1 na tayo, ma'am. No? So it's Fire Prevention Month na po of the Bureau of Fire Protection. Then we have upcoming activities, ma'am, no, na naka-line up po. So this coming March 1, we will have our fire prevention run and at the same time the kick-off ceremony at CGC. So we will start at exactly 3 a.m. No, for the fun run and to be followed by a kick-off ceremony program po sa Davao Global Township. So we are inviting everyone to join us on March 1, then on March 3 to 4, 2026, ma'am, that's a Tuesday and a Wednesday, at SMCT Davao Annex Activity Area. We will be having our Fire Square Roadshow 2026, and on March 14 and 15, the most awaited Fire Olympics of the Davao City Fire District, ma'am, at Lyceum of the Philippines University, ma'am.
Alright. Daghan kayong salamat Ma'am Chen of BFP. Gani mga kasama atong nadungog si kanang Ma'am Chen from BFP Davao City Fire District. No sa gayud ang ilang opisina nga mopadala og blood donors sa atong umaabot nga bloodletting activity karong February 28, 2026 diha sa Gaisano Ganturil, Davao City. Daghan kayong salamat ma'am sa pagtubag sa DXDC 621 RadyoMaN Davao og kita-kits sa BFP karong February 28, 2026. Kasama mo sa balita og serbisyo publiko. Kini si RadyoMaN Kuwensi Habasa, Tatak RMN.
Straight to the point.
Salamat kang RadyoMaN Kuwensi Habasa mga kasama iyang pakiginabi sa atuang partner sa atuang RMN Networks Dugtong Buhay Blood Donation Activity, no other than ang atuang Bureau of Fire Protection diri sa atuang Dakbayan sa Davao. Atong oras sa 5:26 sa mga wala pa na ibuhi diya mga kasama. Maayong hapon kaninyong tanan sa mga kausapayan, of course sa mga galantaw kanato karon online. Good afternoon once again kaninyong tanan mga kasama. O karon natuan ang balikan ang linya ni RadyoMaN Bien Abanos mga itag-update sa dugang pang katikaran sa atong palibot diri sa Davao City. Yes, RadyoMaN Bien. Yes, RadyoMaN Bien.
Ipaklaro karon na sa mga apektado na itabo nga demolisyon sa Arroyo compound na crossing ning siyudad sa Davao nga dili tinuod na bigwa nga impormasyon nga walay relokasyon nga gitagana alang kanila. Matod pa sa panginabi sa mga magsigya nga si Christopher Masayon, presidente sa Homeowners Association, nagpasalamat siya sa pamilyang Luy nga matod pa tag-iya sa yuta sa Arroyo compound. Nabisan mo kinang lehitimo nga tag-iya sa luna itabang kini sa ilang relokasyon. Matod pa na mukabat sa 20,000 pesos ang financial assistance, transportasyon sa sakiran o gihatagan sila sa 80 kilometer nga yuta nga naimutang karon sa barangay Takunan, Tugbok District ni Sila sa Davao. Matod pa nga sa karon na sa Takunan relocation na nasa 847 ka pamilya ang hatagan sa luna. Kapin na sa 100 kabalay ang natukod o kapin na 445 ka nagpuyo nga mga residente busag ipadawagan nila sa mga silingan diya sa Arroyo compound nga mobalhin na aron mahiluna na sa pagpila pamilya. Ang RadyoMaN layout at pabinawan pamahayag ni Mr. Masayon na ang presidente sa asosasyon.
Kung nakita manggod nila ang sitwasyon diri nga medyo hayag ba nga kung may mo dawato nila ang relocation nga gi-offer sa tagiya sa yuta kay nga naman ngadto sa ngadto wala gid sila nahimo kay wala may titulo ang gipaglaban ng ato sila ang mga loy na aman pero lamang gud po nga dili mo sugot sa among ginabaan kinampo sila prinsipyo gud nga dili paglaban nila.
Pero katong sir katong naapa mo dito kabalag jud mo nga naay tag-iya ang yuta.
Siyempre kabalo gid mi kay siyempre nang iskwat ra man mi diyan dapita sa pagsulod na mo
pamahayag ni Mr. Christopher Masayon, ang presidente sa Homeowners Association diya sa Takunan, nagikan matod pa sila sa Arroyo compound nga natabangan sa diya sa yuta RadyoMaN Layo.
Okay, thank you so much sa maong update RadyoMaN Bien.
RadyoMaN Layo kay man mo natos tong sugidig paminaw kinang lagsi katong lawas kaduday busa kinang natong life extension vitamin D3 kini man gud og protektas tong lawas patok sa managdang sakit unya ka lagsi ka magparay kasi mong kalagsi katong naminaw nga duday balatian adto mo sa life extension integrated medical clinic kinamutang sa door 8 sa Grand Men's Hotel building Magallanes Street tingato siyudad sa Davao tungod ang life extension vitamin D3 isaligan sa mga doktor sa imong kalibutan kasama mo sa balitang serbisyo publiko RadyoMaN Bien Abanos sa Tatak RMN.
Straight to the point.
Salamat sa mga usapa kang RadyoMaN Bien Abanos ug ay tamahuman mga kasama ato usang lakbitan maki-update kita unsay mga katikaran karon sa ato ang mga viral entertainment world. Kay diri mga kasama si Michelle D ug iyang mga higala daw gisabpi na sa National Bureau of Investigation. Atong sayron ang kinatibuk-an detalye mga kasama pinaagi sa report sa ato ang student intern mga kasama gikan Davao del Norte State College, no other than kasamang Rafi Makasiding.
Panleo, gikumpirma ni Attorney Maggie Abraham Garduque, legal counsel ni Michelle D nga nag-issue na og sabina ang National Bureau of Investigation kon NBI sa beauty queen nga si Michelle D, Samantha Panlilio og actress Rian Ramos. Subay sa mga alegasyon sa physical assault o illegal detention sa driver ni Rian nga gilimod usab sa mga artista. We understand that part of the case build up and investigation of the NBI is to send the subpoena to the respondents. governments so that their side can be heard on this matter also. Kini sumala kay Attorney Maggie ug dugang niya nga andam mag-comply ang artista. Gani naghatag sabog update ang legal team ni Michelle sa kaso nga qualified theft batok sa driver nga si alias Totoy nga nakadawat sabog sa pina nga nagikan sa Office of the City Prosecutor of Makati aron atubangon ang kaso ug mipahayag ang abogado ni Michelle D nga sila nagmalaumon nga makabot ang katarungan sa kaso. Sa pikas bahin nangandam sad ang kampo ni Rian Ramos sa pagpasaka og civil and criminal cases batok sa mga individual nga nagpakaylap og mga pamahayag nga libiloso. Og giawhag sa kampo ni Rian ang publiko nga panalipdan ang katungod og dignidad sa mga kababaihan sa haduol na ang kasaulugan sa Women's Month. RadyoMaN Leo.
Okay, thank you so much kasamang Rafi sa maong update sa atong entertainment world.
Kasama mo sa balita at serbisyo publiko, Rafi makasiding diyan ni si intern Tatak RadyoMaN.
Straight to the point.
Thank you so much once again kagasamang Rafi makasiding ato ang student intern makasama gikan Davao del Norte State College. O karong takna makasama bag-o ay kita mahuman sa ato ang programa. Ako ang usang ipaambit kaninyo makasama asa na po di ay si RadyoMaN Jenny Mamalia sa Moadto alang sa ato ang promo nga paldo sa DXDC logo. Kung ikaw buot makadaog makasama og moabot hangtod 1,000 pesos, ayaw na palabya makasama kung mahatagan ka og sticker sa ato ang DXDC logo ipapilit na sa imong sakyanan kay kung maatlan ka karong bulan sa Marso makasama nga dunay sticker ng imong sakyanan aw panigurado paldo gyud ka. Gawas sa kabalo na napitla ni mo sticker sa DXDC makasama ang imong sakyanan na kay kahibalo gatanaw ka sa ato ang Facebook Live or ga-follow ka sa ato ang Facebook page nya na pa jud kay nailhan nga RadyoMaN so sa doble gyud ang papremyong imong matagamtaman. So, tanginan nyo makasama si RadyoMaN Jenny Mamalias or kung naamoy mapunitan nga sticker nga wala na pilit, punitan na makasama, ipilit na sa imuhang sakyanan. Kay kaganina, gika na makasama si RadyoMaN Gretchel kay wala sa si RadyoMaN Jenny. Dito sa may Katalunan Grande, Pequeño Shrine Hills makasama, nagpapilit si RadyoMaN Gretchel dito og mga DXDC logo sticker. Og asa na pod ka ugma si RadyoMaN Jenny. No other than sa Turil Rotonda. And if even sa tuang Turil Public Market, dira sa mo suroy si RadyoMaN Jenny Mamalias kung masugatan nimo makasama labi na sa mga Turilians. Ay nagpagduha-duha og pangayo og sticker mga kasama ipilit sa imong tricycle, sa imong motor, sa imong sakyanan kay karong bulan sa Marso kung maatlan ka mga kasama nga dunay sticker o DXDC logo sticker ang imong sakyanan na siguradong paldo gyud ka. O nang atangin ninyo ato ang papremyo mga kasama diri lang gihapon sa paldo sa DXDC logo. Once again, atangin ninyo si RadyoMaN Jenny Mamalias dira sa may Turil Rotonda ingon man sa Turil Public Market.
Straight to the point.
Alas 5:34 na ang atong oras mga kasama. Wala na kitay igong oras na sobra pag yun. Mga kato, mga nagunang issue, balita, isgutanan ng uban pa nga naglangkob karong adlaw mga kasama. Daghang kay salamat sa inyong mga walay puwas nga suporta mga ingon man na pag-uban og pagpaminaw kanako until the end. Labi na ning mga gapaminaw sila mga radyo og of course sa mga galantaw kanato online. Thank you so much kasama and uban na pug kuninyo ug mapuhon diri lang gyapon sa atuang tulumanon matag hapon ang Straight to the Point afternoon edition. At ang ilang sabi nyo sa kanunay mga kasama ang managlahing programa diri lang gyapon sa atuang Sibyaanan ang DXDC 621 RMN Davao. Of course ay ako manamilit mga kasama ako usang i-vlog ayaw mong ayaw ninyo si Piata mga kasama og follow ang atuang social media pages sa managlahing social media platform sab. Mga kasama, sundi kami kanunay sa atuang radio dial nga 621 kHz. Ingon man i-follow ang atuang social media pages sa Facebook mga kasama. Makita mininyo sa DXDC 621 RMN Davao, DXDC Digital sa YouTube, TikTok, Instagram ug X. Naasab kami mga kasama sa Zeno Radio Mobile App. I-download lang na og pangitaa ang DXDC 621 RMN Davao aron updated ka bisan asa ka man. Musunod na mga kasama ang RMN Network News. Sama ko sa paalang sa Straight to the Point. Uban si RadyoMaN Janet Satek, RadyoMaN Makoy Tamondong, isip Digital Media Assistant, mga RadyoMaN sab nga na sa transmitter ug sa tibuok puwersa sa DXDC nga nagpaluyo ni atong programa mga kasama. Once again, kini si RadyoMaN Leo Battulayan. Tatak RadyoMaN.
Straight to the
ICC 0121, 0125, and for the record, we are in open session.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask parties and participants to confirm that those present in the courtroom today are the same as the people in attendance on Tuesday. Mr. Prosecutor, the prosecutor. Good morning. The OTP is represented by the team. Mr. Ido Duke, Associate Trial Lawyer, is one additional. I myself, I am back after a short absence. The presiding judge, thank you very much. Legal representatives of victims, Ms. Masida. Ms. Masida, thank you. Good morning, Your Honor. It is the same team as Monday, not Tuesday, but Monday. The presiding judge, thank you very much. We can now turn to the defense. Mr. Kaufman, good morning, Madam President, Your Honors. It is the same lineup as previous days. I will go no further than that in French. The presiding judge, thank you very much. We can now move on to the defense and their submissions on the merits. Mr. Kaufman, you may address the court.
Now, before I start, I would like to make one general comment, and it's a comment which every defense counsel who appears before this court is obliged to make. So, if the mainstream media in the Philippines and the NGOs reporting on his case today report anything about the defense's submissions, I hope that they will at least communicate the following faithfully. The defense does not disrespect the soul of any deceased person, nor does it make light of the loss of life. Any criticism made by us today will not be leveled at the loved ones of those such as the tearful relative who I saw in the gallery here on Tuesday. The defense's criticism will be confined only to the prosecution's document containing the charges, which governs these proceedings, not what has been reported elsewhere in the media. It's not the defense's role to give an alternative narrative, nor to give an explanation for the facts and figures presented by the prosecution. The defense's role is simply to persuade your honours that Mr. Rodrigo Duterte should not remain in detention for years to come, simply because the prosecution cannot make out substantial grounds to believe that this individual committed the crimes with which he is charged. Now, Mr. Julian Nichols confidently said the other day that you can ignore Rodrigo Duterte's speeches. Disregard every speech ever made by Mr. Duterte, he said. Throw them all out. There is still ample evidence of the substantial grounds based on the other evidence. That's transcript T4, page 45, lines 5 to 6. Helpful advice from no less than the day-to-day prosecutor in charge of this case, because we will show that the evidence is not substantial, rather totally inadequate. But in any event, since I can leave no stone unturned, I now turn to those speeches. Now, if there's one thing that I've learned from the domestic media coverage of this case, it is that journalists and their editors have a tendency to fixate on the salacious elements of a person's speeches while ignoring the less interesting parts. And so it was with Rodrigo Duterte. The prosecution has had its opportunity to show you a selection of these speeches and seems to believe that the more they show, the greater the chances of convincing Your Honours to confirm the charges. But what the prosecution has not told the public is that in its document containing the charges, which governs these proceedings and nothing else, it has only supplied 20 of these speeches as proof of criminal intent. And as I mentioned in my opening statement, 10 of these speeches, including 2 referred to by the deputy prosecutor, actually contain an exhortation to the use of lawful self-defense. Thereafter, we found a further 35 speeches, which will be found at tab 9, 11 to 26, 29 to 35, 37 to 41, 43 to 46, 137, and 152. Now, this is obviously not a competition. The point we really merely wish to make is that relying on the former prosecutor's speeches as a means of proving criminal intent is impossible. Now, I'd like to go back to that one speech which I promised the other day to show you. This is a speech, the second speech that the deputy prosecutor referred to in his opening statement. And this refers to the responsibility that Mr. Duterte said that he would shoulder, promising to shield rogue officers from prosecution. If we may, the first of these speeches, and I quote what the deputy prosecutor read from this speech. So that police is under the DILG, so I have to believe the story of the police, for simply they are my subordinates and I am ultimately responsible for their deeds. Now let's look at what the deputy prosecutor didn't state from the same speech. And the order is simply this: go out, arrest them if you can, but if there is no peaceful method of doing it and you are presented with violent resistance, thereby placing your jeopardy in your life, you shoot, well, the son of the bitch. Mr. Duterte's language, obviously, but nevertheless an exhortation to lawful self-defense. Let's have a look at another one of the prosecution's speeches mentioned in their pre-confirmation brief. Once again, on shielding criminal agents from prosecution. I quote, this is, I apologize, PHL OTP 00001127 at page 5. And I quote, but if you do your duty, do not worry about cases. I'll protect you. Believe me. That's why I will protect them. And if there's somebody who will go to jail, it's me. I will assume full legal responsibility. Now let's have a look at the exonerating element, which comes right underneath the allegedly incriminating element. He said, just do it right. We have our trainings that you can only kill if your life is in danger, and you are there performing the duty of a law enforcer. That's about it. Now I will turn to one of our speeches that we found in our research, one of the 35 that the prosecution didn't find. And I will terminate there because we have the rest, which we've referred you to in the tabs. So this is an exonerating speech which the prosecution either missed or ignored because it doesn't suit its case. And it was a speech which was made right at the start of the presidency, which could be seen as setting out the standard for his presidency. Mr. Duterte said this: I promised them I will suppress crime and take control of the drug situation, which was really running wild in our country today. Make no mistake about it. I repeat, again for all and for everybody's consumption, do not kill if you are not in danger of losing your life. Well, it goes on. You can see it there on the screen. Well, of course, the prosecution knows that we are going to argue that many of these speeches, in fact, the majority of these speeches, I would say, contain this exhortation to the lawful use of self-defense. And the learned counsel, Mr. Edward Jeremy, for the prosecution, tried to get around the problem by inventing the novel concept of the elastic mouth, which out of one side emanates the nasty truth, while out of the other side issues the supposedly disingenuous advice for the police to act in self-defense. But I ask your honours and the people of the Philippines listening in today, how many times did you hear the former president state at the beginning of any address that he had a speech of 2 pages prepared, but to his regret, it didn't come from the heart? And then he would proceed to speak at length, sometimes for an hour or more, in his own uniquely colourful and crusty language, exposing his homespun theories on crime control, swearing a bit here, boasting a bit there, and generally delivering a speech more akin to Finnegan's Wake than a Gettysburg Address. That does not suggest crafty design, hinted at by Mr. Jeremy, quite the opposite. Mr. Jeremy's resort to the say one thing, mean another thing theory is complete supposition. It is not a legitimate argument, because it implies that one cannot rely on anything coming out of Mr. Duterte's mouth, and that does not help the case for the prosecution at all. Well, that's about it for the speeches. I'll now turn to crimes against humanity and the contextual elements. And here I would like to start off by addressing the requirement that the acts of murder alleged be committed as part of or in themselves constitute a widespread or systematic attack. The second requirement is that these acts of murder be directed against the civilian population. With respect to the unique ICC requirement of an organisational policy, I would suggest that this concept has been conflated with the common plan, and as such, I shall address the matter later in my submissions. So, to start by reference to the widespread or systematic nature of the attack, I would like to draw your honour's attention to the fact that Count 1 contains 9 incidents of murder in one city, Davao, hardly widespread. Ms. Robin Croft, in her submissions yesterday for the prosecution, Tuesday, told you that the widespread nature of Count 1 was evidenced by the multitude of bodies in a quarry, a mass grave. Well, the prosecution and the authorities in the Philippines have had years to continue its investigations since the judicial warrant was reimposed. I mean, they could have dug up the entire city of Davao, but all they have managed to produce, the prosecution on the matter, is a reference to Leila de Lima in a Senate committee where she talks about the discovery of a few human remains which could have belonged to World War II Japanese soldiers. The same goes for another witness's outlandish assertion that bodies were thrown into the sea off the coast of Davao. Well, the whole Gulf could have been dredged, but not one executed corpse has surfaced. As for counts 2 and 3, Ms. Croft showed us some maps with coloured dots to indicate the magnitude and geographical spread of what the prosecution alleges, without, of course, proving that they were extrajudicial killings not countenanced within the 49 incidents. Indeed, for this reason, there is nothing to link the charged incidents, those 49 incidents, to the wider picture. According to the appeals chamber, which confirmed a pre-trial chamber ruling on the matter in Bagbo, filing number 432 in the case record at paragraphs 35 to 36, any factual allegations outside the charged incidents, in this case masses of generically alleged extrajudicial killings, must be proved to the required standard. And for this, NGO reports, academic statistics, and media articles are, as a rule, considered insufficient. Ms. Croft also screened images taken from the Duterte administration's PDEA report for the years 2016 to 2019, if we can pull that up now, which cite figures of the number of deaths of drug personalities in anti-drug operations without proving that they were illegally murdered, but she neglected to contextualize these numbers by reference to other parts of the same report which show that in comparison to the number of arrests and operations conducted, the number of deaths are minimal. Please, if you will, show a bar chart that we have helpfully prepared with the figures and a pie chart with the percentages. So, if I may just conclude, the only thing that is widespread here, or rather spread wide, is the utility of the prosecution's statistics. Now, turning to the civilian population, or the target of the attack, let me say straight away that the prosecution case theory, with respect to the definition of the targeted population, is, to put it extremely politely, muddled. In layman's terms, the prosecution has hedged its bets by presenting two alternative propositions, hoping that this pre-trial chamber will settle for one of them. From paragraph 17 to paragraph 20, inclusive of its document containing the charges, the prosecution argues that Mr. Duterte launched an attack on the entire population of the Philippines, pursuant to a policy to neutralize persons perceived or alleged to be engaged in crime. In paragraph 21, however, this so-called attack is directed not against the civilian population at large, the whole population, but rather against a considerably smaller and nebulous margin of society, namely the alleged criminals themselves. Let us start by dealing with the first scenario, namely that the former president, whose loyalty and love for his country is and has always been beyond question, launched a wholesale attack on the whole population of the Philippines, on the entirety of his nation, including the very same people who put him into power. Such a suggestion is not just incomprehensible, it is quite bizarre. The reason for this rather strange assertion, so I submit, is grounded in the prosecution's latest brainstorm on the matter, which it set out last year in a brief appealing a decision of this very same pre-trial chamber in the El Hishri case. And I do apologize in advance for the rather dull expose which will follow, but I do find it instructive to illustrate the chameleon-like nature of the prosecution's case theory. In this instance, Your Honours found that the civilian population attacked by El Hishri comprised prison detainees professing a certain political ideology. In so doing, Your Honours declined to issue an arrest warrant for El Hishri, where the victims of his crimes had been detained for totally unconnected and non-political reasons. Now, you might ask yourselves, why did the prosecution decide to appeal this decision? It was not as if it had been denied the arrest warrant for El Hishri that it had sought. Well, a key to the answer, so I believe, is to be found in the chronology of the events. On 10th February 2025, the prosecution rushed out its application for Mr. Duterte's arrest, believing that a unique opportunity to apprehend him had arisen. In this application, the prosecution defined the attack perpetrated by Mr. Rodrigo Duterte as being aimed at the entire population of the Philippines. Let us now fast forward to 10th July 2025. The pre-trial chamber, this same pre-trial chamber, ordered the arrest of Khalid al-Hishri for an attack on an objectively identifiable civilian population of detainees, while finding no justification to suspect him of crimes committed against a discrete subsector of that population, exhibiting characteristics distinct from those of the general population. Well, as you can guess, the prosecution didn't like that decision and hastened to appeal it. Not, I would suggest, out of any true concern for the purity of international humanitarian law, but rather because it put a spanner into the works of the Duterte case. That is, the only other active case that is his prosecuting before this court. After all, if we apply the resulting logic of Your Honour's decision in al-Hishri to the prosecution's case theory in the Duterte case, at least as it stood as of 10 July 2025, then alleged drug pushers and alleged criminals would be deemed a separate, subjectively defined subgroup of the general Filipino civilian population, displaying different characteristics and, as a result, excluded as targets of the attack. So, 8 days passed between this decision of yours, Your Honours, and the notification of the confidential version of the prosecution's pre-confirmation brief on 18 July last year. And I'm prepared to wager that while beavering away with their attempt to appeal the al-Hishri decision, the gurus on the top floor of the Office of the Prosecutor were also frantically discussing how to deal with this inconvenient fly in their conceptual ointment. They had to think of a way to accommodate this pre-trial chamber's ruling while not compromising their appeal. So, lo and behold, and rather unsurprisingly, the pre-confirmation brief contained a new feature, namely the second scenario to which I referred earlier, that the target of the attack was not the Filipino as a whole, but the suspected drug pushers and criminals. Now, even if the former president did promulgate an organizational policy of eliminating suspected criminals and drug pushers, which he most definitely did not, this policy did not and could not constitute an attack directed against a clearly definable civilian population. Firstly, the segment of society victimized cannot be said to display objective characteristics distinguishing them from other members of society and thus rendering them susceptible to an attack. After all, how does one define a suspected drug pusher or suspected criminal for the purposes, let us say, of count 1, where there were no HVTs or high-value targets or PRD lists or kill lists or what have you? It is not as if criminals have identifying features such as a shifty look or a 5 o'clock shadow or a sack marked swag. In other words, the definition suspected drug pusher or suspected criminal entails the exercise of discretion on the part of the perpetrator implementing the organizational policy. It is a shifting and mutable concept. It is a subjective determination. In our submission, there has to be, at the very least, an objectively discernible characteristic which unites the members of the targeted group such that they can be deemed a civilian population for the purposes of the attack. leaving the determination of membership of a civilian population to the people who pulled the trigger introduces a degree of random selection, and as cited quite clearly in the Al-Hassan confirmation decision at paragraph 149, the prosecution must prove that the attack was not directed against a limited group of randomly selected persons. This ruling, Your Honours, was the expression of the law as it had stood for many years, ever since the decision authorising an investigation in the Kenya situation, where at paragraph 81, the pre-trial chamber defined a civilian population as a group sharing, and I quote, distinguishing features, and added as follows, and I quote again, the prosecutor will need to demonstrate to the standard of proof applicable that the attack was directed against the civilian population as a whole and not merely against randomly selected individuals. So let us ask ourselves whether the alleged attack in this case was directed at the population as a whole or at a subjectively defined subgroup of perceived or alleged criminal offenders. The minute the distinguishing features of the civilian population in question are defined through the application of subjective criteria, the targeting process becomes completely random. The targeted civilians are perceived criminals, but perceived to be so by whom? Is it not the case that one man's despicable criminal is another person's righteous saint? In fact, have we not heard from the civil society that many of the victims were not drug pushers or criminals, but innocent members of the local community? To me, and as a matter of logic, it would appear that the targeted population in the Duterte case was selected randomly, even according to the prosecution's own witnesses, who talk about quotas of neutralization that had to be met, and their motives for target selection, which had frequently nothing to do with suspected criminality, but rather personal vendetta, or on one occasion, just because the victim had cheated at cards. With that, Madam President, Your Honours, I conclude the chapeau or contextual requirements of crimes against humanity. And I will now turn to the modes of liability or means of perpetration. Now, I have racked my brain for many a month pondering one question. If Rodrigo Duterte was so shamelessly brazen as to broadcast his murderous intent in public ever since he was the mayor of Davao, why did it take the ICC prosecution almost 4 years to open an investigation after Rodrigo Duterte pulled his country out of the International Criminal Court? After all, why did the ICC prosecution not just save itself all the hassle of its jurisdictional problem, a fundamental issue that still plagues it and remains to be resolved by the appeals chamber? We won't talk about that today, obviously. But why did the prosecution not seek to initiate its official investigation within the 1-year withdrawal period, especially given the fact that Mr. Karim Khan, the victim's representative embedded in the role of chief prosecutor, had received judicial authorization to interview at least one of the criminal cooperating witnesses substantiating the crimes of the Davao mayoral period? Well, for me at any rate, it didn't take too long for the penny to drop. As I mentioned in my opening statement, the prosecution knows that it is not enough simply to assert that Rodrigo Duterte said outrageous things and that deaths occurred, and so, as a result, he must be criminally responsible. There is a requirement for what is called a causal nexus. The prosecution has to show which one of Duterte's statements, orders, or commands were given to a specific individual who then went out and pulled the trigger or communicated the command to someone else who also went out and pulled the trigger, killing one of its 78 identified victims. That would have been the classical way to prove a causal link between stuff that came out of Rodrigo Duterte's mouth and the deaths pertinent to the case. That would have been ordering under Article 25(3)(b). But the prosecution cannot show such a causal link. They've never been able to do that. They show you a lovely pyramid. It's on the screen, with Duterte at the top, the co-perpetrators underneath, the DDS handlers underneath them, and the hitmen perpetrators at the very bottom. To quote Mr. Julian Nichols, how cute. But what the learned prosecutors can't show you is the connecting line between Duterte at the top and the next level down, comprising the so-called co-perpetrators. I hope Ms. Croft will forgive me for vandalizing her screenshot, but there you have it. That is where the apex slips off the pyramid of Giza. The most they can do is allege that their cooperating witnesses who pulled the trigger and whose credibility is about as worthless as a devalued peso, understood that killing is what Duterte would have wanted, or that they had no choice but to comply because that was what was expected of them by their handlers, or other such similar expressions of a totally subjective sense of obligation. But as they know, not one of the 49 incidents mentioned in the document containing the charges manifests such a causal link between a speech, an order, and one of the charged incidents. I will state it for the record. In fact, I will state it a number of times during my submissions. There is no smoking gun in this case. And that is not for want of a desperate attempt to find one on the part of the prosecution, with all their leading questions when they interviewed their criminal cooperating witnesses. Not one witness relevant to any of the 49 incidents with which Mr. Rodrigo Duterte is charged will testify that he received a direct order from the former president to go out and kill someone. Let us just digest this. All those speeches where the former president made various threats to kill, but not one demonstrable incident set out in the prosecution's document containing the charges, which details an act of murder committed as a result of a direct order given by him. This, in and of itself, should be sufficient to convince any reasonable bystander observing the conduct of these proceedings that Rodrigo Duterte is innocent of these charges leveled at him. It is for this reason, and because of the complete lack of reliable cooperating witnesses, that the prosecution has alleged not one, but a plethora of theories as to the means of perpetration, to link the crimes allegedly committed to the person who is far removed from the incidents of murder and who has been targeted for prosecution. And I say targeted for prosecution. Normally, I would say that such a multiplicity of legal theories speaks to a lack of clarity and prosecutorial uncertainty. Indeed, some of these modes of liability, as pleaded, contradict each other as a matter of logic. Nonetheless, I would like to make the following general observation. As the defense has progressively reviewed the massive databases of evidence disclosed, it has become increasingly apparent that given the absence of direct evidence directly implicating Rodrigo Duterte or even indicating his participation in or control over any one of the 49 incidents alleged in the document containing the charges, the prosecution has resorted to papering over the cracks with human rights reports, press statements, hearsay, and of course, Mr. Duterte's bluster and political hyperbole. And where these documents are not suffice, the prosecution has resorted to the time-worn theory of indirect co-perpetration, Article 25(3)(a), of which the parameters, I would respectfully submit, are still subject to dispute. So I will now turn to this mode of liability, which is the principal mode of liability leveled at Rodrigo Duterte. As we all know, in order to prove criminal liability through indirect co-perpetration, there is a need to show a common plan upon which the suspect and his co-perpetrators, because you need co-perpetrators for indirect co-perpetration, a plan on which they mutually agreed. And that common plan must, without exception, have a criminal element. As I have already stated, the only plan in play was not just totally legitimate in nature, but was, in addition, wildly supported by the Filipino electorate, which ensured that Mayor Rodrigo Duterte's governance of Davao City throughout the years would thereafter put him into the Malacanang. According to the prosecution, the criminality of the common plan expressed itself as follows, and I quote from their documentation: an agreement to neutralize alleged criminals in the Philippines, including those associated with drugs, through violent crimes, including murder. Well, they really covered all options there. The existence of such a criminal plan is, of course, entirely preposterous, and, I should say, totally denied. I would suggest that the prosecution cannot point to any particular point in time where there is direct evidence indicating that even two of their so-called co-perpetrators actually met to agree to such a preposterous scheme. As such, the plan cannot be described as common to anyone. If anything, it's an artificial construct derived from the 10 assertions which are set out in paragraphs 24 to 33, inclusive, of the prosecution's pre-confirmation brief, all of which comprise circumstantial evidence of the lowest quality, pointing to a mutually agreed design which exists in the prosecution's mind and nowhere else. Of course, there is nothing wrong with construing the existence of a common criminal plan from circumstantial data. But the cardinal rule of such a category of evidence is that the incriminating facts derived therefrom must be the only reasonable inference in the circumstances. What we can say with a degree of certainty, which reaches more than a substantial degree of certainty, is that no inference can be drawn from the comments of crime-based perpetrators. And to hammer the point home, I would like to screen you just a selection of excerpts taken from the interviews of a number of the prosecution's criminal cooperating witnesses. Or witnesses. Where are they? Number one. Interviewee, at least more or less than 10 buy-bust operations. Where somebody was shot, asked the interviewer. Yes, sir. Interviewer 1. Okay. And on those 10 occasions, was the shooting justified? Interviewee. Yes, sir. Number 2. So, if he shot at us, we would also shoot back. But if he were to stab at us with a knife, then we wouldn't. We wouldn't shoot a person that was holding a knife. And the third one. Witnesses who said, the PNP never said kill those people. Another quote. From what I recall of the incidents that I was at, all of them had guns, and they were pointing them at the pusher-buyers, or they were pointing their guns at the pusher-buyers. At the operations I was at, I'm talking about the operations I was at, the reason that they were killed was because they were pointing their guns at us, or they were firing their guns at the pusher-buyers. That's from the prosecution's own witnesses. Now, let us analyze the other circumstances as set out in paragraphs 24 to 33, inclusive, to see whether a meeting of minds between co-perpetrators is indeed the only reasonable inference in the circumstances. The first indication, and that is that in the late 1980s, in other words, 20 years before the charges in this case, Mayor Duterte allegedly instructed civilian confidants and local police to neutralize. And I stress to neutralize and not to kill criminals. That's what's stated in the PCB. And that he provided weapons and funds for this purpose. Now, I would say that there is nothing untoward in providing policemen or civil volunteers with weapons to carry out their lawful duties. That's what happens in my country. The prosecution has not shown us how arming civilian volunteers is actually illegal. And the burden of proof rests on it. After all, one does not fight crime with kind words and gentle admonishments. The fact that these conscripted civilians understood the words to neutralize to mean to murder is not something for which Rodrigo Duterte must be held responsible. Trust me, had any one of the unreliable, insider, criminal cooperating witnesses substantiating the assertions made in paragraph 24 of the pre-confirmation brief said that Rodrigo Duterte gave a direct order to murder one of the 78 victims, the prosecution's lawyers would have written it into their charges, point blank. But they did not. And furthermore, any false allegation made by cooperating criminal witnesses made years before the charged incidents and without the time frame of the case does not constitute pattern or similar fact evidence indicating a predisposition to murder criminals. Accordingly, the allegations concerning the activities of the so-called Davao Dev Squad, formerly the so-called Lambada Boys, are irrelevant both to proving a criminal plan and that such a plan, more importantly, was common to any of the so-called co-perpetrators mentioned in the document containing the charges and released a few days before the confirmation hearing in a lesser redacted version of the PCB. Now, thinking like a prosecutor, I would say that the reason why the prosecution has fixated to the fourth supposed indication of a common criminal plan, and that is set out in paragraph 27. and mentions that on the very day that the former president appointed Ronald De La Rosa, Bato, as the chief of Philippine National Police, De La Rosa issued a pre-drafted command circular number 16 of 2016 on 1st of July of that year, formally launching the anti-illegal drugs campaign nationwide in express pursuance of Duterte's campaign promises. There is no dispute that CMC number 16 of 2016 mentions Project Double Barrel, which was indeed modelled after Davao City's policing strategy and was directed at the neutralisation of illegal drug personalities nationwide. But here we come to the crux of the prosecution case. The manifestation of the criminal plan in writing. Neutralisation as a euphemism for murder. Ms. Robin Croft certainly thought so when making her submission on behalf of the prosecution, highlighting the word in bright red and presenting us with a slide where the word neutralisation forms an integral element of the common plan. To import an element of criminality into what would otherwise be a perfectly anodyne legal document, the prosecution resorts to relying on speeches and interviews given by Ronald De La Rosa, Bato, within a day or two of him being appointed the chief of Philippine National Police. For example, in an interview relied on by the prosecution at footnote 136 of the pre-confirmation brief, De La Rosa explains how tok hang means knock and plead, and that it is a totally legitimate police strategy. However, the citations relied on by the prosecution to infer that tok hang was a criminal modus operandi are completely taken out of context. I shall just cite one question and answer from the media interview on which the prosecution relies at paragraph 27 to prove that De La Rosa, when talking about instilling fear in the hearts of drug users, was actually proposing a policy which was anything but criminal and totally supportive of the main tenet of the defense, namely that the only use of force would be that envisaged by way of self-defense. And I quote, question, "Sir, you mentioned about instilling fear. When you instill fear, how do you ensure that you do not violate human rights?" Answer, good question. We will see to it that the police operational procedures are being followed in every legitimate police operations. When they see that the police are really determined to go for them legally, he stresses the word, and many of them go down, maybe they'll get scared. That's PHL OTP 000-16403 at page 13. In any event, what the prosecution has not told you, and what it has not shown you by way of its opulent images on the video screen, is that the supposed criminal blueprint set out in Command Circular 2016, number 16 of 2016, is totally negated by the content of the document itself. Let us take a look at paragraph 8E and F of the very same command circular, number 16 of 2016, which states quite clearly that all operations should strictly observe the rights of the accused enshrined in the Philippine Constitution as well as international law and human rights. Why, I ask you, did Mr. Edward Jeremy, counsel for the prosecution, in his very eloquent and gilded address, not screen this part of the command circular? After all, this command circular, as elaborated by Ms. Robin Croft, was the very essence of his criminal common plan, in writing. This is the basis, so Mr. Jeremy stated, for the criminal agreement to kill high-value targets. And if that were not enough, the lawfulness of Command Circular 16 of 2016 was reiterated 3 weeks later on 22 July through the initiation and issuance of PNP Investigative Directive number 12 of 2016, which set out additional policies and guidelines in the conduct of double barrel. I think there, Madam President, if I may, we can take a break, obviously with your permission.
Bien sûr, maître, je vous remercie, Captain, je vous remercie beaucoup.
Thank you, Counsel. Thank you very much. If you can also indicate the numbers of the documents that you have referred to, that will be good. Thank you very much, says Judge Motok. We will take a break now and resume at 11:30. Thank you very much.